In the dead of night, under a sky pierced with stars, the desert stretched endlessly silent, but for the whisper of the wind over jagged rocks. Out there, at the edge of a rushing river, a 12-year-old Apache girl named Ayani stood alone, her eyes scanning the shadows for any sign of movement. Orphaned as a child, she had grown up on her own, learning to read the land, the river, and the subtle signs of life and danger that most adults would overlook. Tonight, though, even her keen senses could not predict what was about to unfold. The river roared like a living thing swollen from recent rains in the distant mountains. Boulders jutted out of the water, slick with moss and mud, threatening to send anything that dared step on them tumbling into the frothing current. Ayani's heart pounded as she spotted a tiny figure struggling on the opposite bank, a girl no older than 10, her leg twisted awkwardly, her small hands clawing at the riverbank as she tried to find footing. The girl's face was streaked with dirt and tears, and her cries barely carried above the tumult of the water, yet they were enough to pierce Ayani's focus. Without thinking twice, Ayani's instincts kicked in. Every step she took across the slippery rocks carried the weight of life and death. One misstep, one slip, and both girls could be swept away into the merciless rapids. But Ayani had learned early that hesitation often meant disaster. She inched closer, her muscles coiled like spring's eyes, never leaving the terrified child. The river's cold bite threatened to numb her fingers, but she pressed forward, determined. Reaching the struggling girl, Ayani spoke softly, her words a mixture of comfort and command. She wrapped the child's arms around her neck, using all her strength to guide her across the river. Each moment felt suspended, as if the world itself had held its breath. The current tugged, trying to steal them both, but Ayani's resolve did not waver. What seemed like a small act, just carrying a child across a river, was in truth a feat of courage that could shift the course of lives she could not yet imagine. When they finally reached the opposite bank, gasping and drenched, the tension didn't leave Ayani immediately. She knelt there, letting the child catch her breath, and felt a strange, quiet sense that this encounter was no accident. Something larger was at play, something that would ripple far beyond the banks of this river and echo through the mountains and valleys that she called home. As the wind rustled through the sparse trees and the first hint of dawn crept over the horizon, a question lingered in the air, unspoken but heavy. Could a single act of bravery from a 12-year-old Apache girl truly alter the destiny of a whole people? That question, unanswerable at the moment, was about to unfold in ways Ayani and the world around her could never have foreseen. The following morning broke over the desert with an almost unreal calm, a sharp contrast to the chaos of the previous night. Ayani, still damp and shivering from the river, thought she would spend the day alone as usual, tending to her meager fire and scanning the horizon for signs of danger. But a sound carried across the plains, a soft rhythmic thud, the unmistakable beat of hooves on packed earth. At first she froze, heart hammering. The idea of bandits or bounty hunters crossing her path was never far from her mind. Yet when she lifted her gaze, what she saw stole the breath from her chest. About 40 Apache warriors emerged from the morning mist, riding in perfect formation. Their faces were painted in blue and white lines, symbols she had never fully understood, but recognized as sacred ceremonial markings. Their approach was deliberate, solemn, and most astonishing of all, it was not meant to intimidate. They stopped at a respectful distance, halting as if on some silent signal. Ayani's small frame seemed insignificant against the dozen horses and imposing figures, yet the air around her thickened with anticipation. She watched as one by one the warriors dropped to one knee in the dust, the ground trembling slightly beneath the weight of their presence. The leader, a tall, broad-shouldered man with eyes that carried the weight of mountains, stepped forward. In his cupped hands lay a silver pendant intricately engraved with patterns that glinted in the rising sun. Alongside it were tiny moccasins and a small dress, its beadwork immaculate and radiating a quiet dignity. Ayani's breath caught. The child she had rescued yesterday, the one who had clung to her through the river, was revealed to be no ordinary girl. She was the daughter of a man of great importance, a respected chief, whose people had watched her courage from afar. The act of carrying that child safely across the river had not only saved her life, but had also proven Ayani's bravery, her compassion, and her unspoken alignment with the values of the tribe. The pendant, the moccasins, and the dress were not mere gifts. They were symbols, acknowledgments of respect and recognition. The warrior's collective gesture, kneeling in the dust, was a language of honor that needed no words. Ayani felt a mixture of awe and disbelief, her young heart pounding in her chest. For a moment, time seemed suspended. She realized she had become part of something far greater than herself, a link in a chain that stretched across generations, connecting courage with tradition, life with duty. As the leader extended the silver pendant toward her, Ayani's hands trembled. The intricate symbols danced in the sunlight, revealing patterns that felt both familiar and enigmatic. Something deep inside stirred a sense of belonging she had never known. Her mind flicked back to the river, to the desperate eyes of the child, and to the strange comfort she had felt, speaking words that the girl seemed to understand instinctively. Could it be that this bond, this unexplainable connection, was more than chance? The warrior's eyes remained fixed on her, a mix of reverence and expectation. Each gaze seemed to pierce into her very soul, affirming that yesterday's act of courage had set wheels in motion that she could not yet comprehend. The child's gratitude, the tribe's acknowledgement, the sacred symbols, it all hinted at secrets, yet unrevealed threads of destiny, woven into the fabric of her life. Ayani sensed that this was only the beginning, that the simple choice to act bravely in the face of danger had opened a door to truths about her own identity, her heritage, and perhaps even her purpose. A hush settled over the desert, broken only by the soft rustle of the horses' manes and the whisper of the morning wind. Ayani knelt briefly, accepting the pendant and the garments, a silent oath forming in her mind. She understood that her journey had taken a turn she could never have imagined, and that the events of the river were but the first step in a path that would test her courage, her wisdom, and her heart. Even as she stood gripping the gifts with care, she felt the weight of the unspoken questions pressing upon her. Who was this child, really? What traditions bound her people so tightly, and how did she, a lone girl, fit into this legacy? Ayani's young mind raced, curiosity mingling with a sense of responsibility she had never known. The desert around her no longer felt empty. It was alive with the promise of adventure, challenge, and the enduring call of honor. Ayani stared at the silver pendant in her small hands, its surface cool and heavy, etched with symbols that seemed to shift in the morning light. Her mind raced as fragments of memory, vague and half-forgotten, stirred from the depths of her childhood. The river, the frightened child, and now this solemn acknowledgement from the tribe were threads of a story she had yet to understand. Slowly, a realization began to dawn. She was not just a solitary girl surviving on her own. She was part of something far greater, a legacy that had been waiting for her to return. The warrior's leader, sensing her hesitation, stepped closer. His voice was calm, but carried weight, echoing across the clearing. Ayani, you are of our blood. Your people have been waiting for you. Your mother was a healer, a woman of great power and wisdom. She spoke of a daughter who would return when the tribe needed her most. Ayani's breath caught in her throat. The words were almost too much to process. Her life until now had been one of survival, of day-to-day struggles and silent solitude. Never had she imagined that her very existence was tied to prophecies and the future of an entire people. He handed her a bundle of carefully wrapped items. Inside lay a small deerskin dress, meticulously beaded in patterns that mirrored those on the pendant, and tiny moccasins worn but lovingly preserved. And beneath them, a faded photograph showing a strong, serene woman cradling a baby who looked remarkably like Ayani herself. The truth hit her in waves. This was her mother, not the woman who had raised her for the first 9 years of her life, but the mother of her blood lost in the chaos of a long-ago raid. Ayani's past suddenly made sense. In shards, the attack that had taken her family, the months of searching, the sense of displacement she had always carried. She had been found, rescued, and raised by strangers, yet her roots ran deeper, hidden in the stories and traditions of the Apache. The leader's words brought a heavy responsibility into sharp focus. "Your people suffer," he continued. "A sickness spreads through the tribe. Children fall ill, elders weaken, and our plants of healing have been destroyed. Only one who knows both the old ways and the strength to act with courage can help us now." Ayani felt the weight settle on her shoulders like a boulder. This was no longer a matter of simple survival. She was being called to step into a role she had never imagined, a healer, a protector, a link between the past and the present. Her thoughts turned to the village beyond the hills, where the sick lay pale and vulnerable. The poisoned water, the burned medicine lodge, and the scattered herbs, all of it painted a grim picture. The tribe needed more than a strong arm. They needed guidance, knowledge, and someone willing to take risks that could cost her life. Ayani understood the stakes clearly. To step forward was to place herself in danger, yet to hesitate could mean disaster for those who had trusted her courage the day before. As the realization sank in, Ayani's connection to the rescued girl became clearer. The child's eyes, filled with trust and understanding despite the pain, had somehow recognized something in her, something beyond words. Perhaps it was the bloodline, the latent wisdom of generations, the prophecy taking shape in her very being. Ayani felt a mixture of fear and determination. The girl she saved yesterday had unknowingly placed the first piece of her destiny into motion, and now the puzzle demanded that she act. The desert around her seemed to tighten, the wind whispering warnings as if echoing the urgency of the moment. Every step Ayani had taken alone over the past years had prepared her for this intersection of past and future. She had tracked animals, rid the land, and navigated the unforgiving wilds. But now the task was different. It was not merely survival, it was life and death for an entire community. The pressure mounted in her chest, each heartbeat, a reminder that her choices could save or doom countless lives. Her eyes swept over the warriors, silent but expectant, and she realized they were not merely waiting for her decision, they were placing their faith in it. This was more than honor. It was trust, a belief that courage and wisdom could shape fate. Ayani's fingers clenched around the pendant, and for the first time she felt the depth of her own strength. The child she had carried, the symbols of her heritage, and the teachings of her lost mother converged into a single truth she could not stand aside. To turn away would be to betray not just the tribe, but the very blood that ran through her veins. A hush settled over the clearing, broken only by the distant cry of a hawk. Ayani took a deep breath, the air heavy with anticipation and the scent of the earth. She had a choice to make, one that would define her and set the course for what was to come. Fear mingled with resolve, doubt with determination, as she stepped forward, ready to claim the destiny that had waited silently for her all these years. The sun had climbed higher over the rugged hills when a shadow fell across the camp, sharp and deliberate. Ayani's eyes narrowed as she spotted a man atop a ridge, surveying the Apache settlement with cold, calculating precision. Marcus Brennan, a land speculator and ruthless opportunist who had spent years attempting to drive the tribe from their ancestral lands, had orchestrated a plan as devious as it was cruel. The water sources were poisoned, the medicine lodge burned, and precious herbs scattered or destroyed. Every element had been calculated to weaken the tribe, to force their most valued child, the prophesied healer, into his hands. Ayani felt a chill run down her spine, but it was quickly replaced by a steely resolve. The knowledge she had acquired in the years, with settlers' subtle lessons, fragments of chemistry and observation, gave her an advantage Brennan could not anticipate. She examined the vials recovered from the water sources, recognizing not just mercury, but arsenic and lead compounds. The combination explained why certain families had fallen ill while others remained unaffected. She realized that Brennan's arrogance had left him blind to the very danger he had unleashed on his own men. Taking a deep breath, Ayani approached the edge of the clearing where Brennan and his men were waiting, their rifles trained on her. Her small frame belied the sharpness of her mind and the courage that had carried her through rivers and deserts alike. Speaking clearly, she warned him of the truth the metals would accumulate in the body, affecting not only the tribe but anyone who drank from the same poison sources, including Brennan himself. Her voice carried the weight of knowledge, confidence, and the authority of someone who understood both the land and the people who relied upon it. Brennan's face faltered for the first time. He had assumed fear and obedience would control Ayani, yet here she was calmly outlining a threat he could not ignore. "Impossible," he muttered under his breath as his eyes flicked nervously to his men, some already showing the first signs of unease. Each step Ayani took was measured, deliberate, forcing Brennan into doubt, while buying precious moments for the warriors hidden among the terrain. Then, with a silent signal, the Apache struck. From concealment behind rocky outcroppings and scattered brush, the warriors rose like shadows of the mountains, themselves rifles poised and precise. Brennan's group, caught off guard by the coordination and swiftness, faltered immediately. The psychological leverage Ayani had orchestrated her calm, informed stance, combined with the sudden appearance of skilled fighters, undermined the confidence that had carried him so far. Within moments, Brennan and his men were surrounded, rifles pointed back at them. Panic replaced arrogance in his eyes. Ayani stepped forward, undeterred, her voice firm. "You have two choices. Help us identify exactly what chemicals you put into the water so we can cure the sick, or face the justice that will come when the authorities hear your crimes." The men exchanged glances, recognizing the futility of resistance. Brennan's bravado shattered, leaving only fear and desperation. Once the threat was neutralized, attention turned to the sick and the poisoned water. Ayani, guided by the knowledge of traditional healing and the analysis of the vials, worked alongside the tribe's elders to prepare remedies. The process was meticulous. Herbs carefully ground and combined water-purified treatments administered to children and elders alike. Slowly, signs of recovery began to appear. The illness that had threatened to decimate the tribe was halted, then reversed, each small improvement a testament to Ayani's courage, intellect, and determination. By nightfall, the camp had returned to a cautious calm. Children laughed softly as they played near the restored riverbanks. Elders tended fires with steady hands, and the air carried a quiet sense of relief. Ayani stood among the warriors, the pendant around her neck catching the last rays of sunlight, symbolizing not only her lineage, but her emergence as a leader and protector. The tribe now recognized her not just as the girl who had shown bravery at the river, but as the prophesied figure whose actions had safeguarded their future. For Ayani, the triumph was both external and internal. She had faced death, deception, and the weight of destiny, and emerged not only unscathed but empowered. The satisfaction of seeing her people alive, their faith restored, and their traditions honored resonated deeply. It was a victory forged through intelligence, courage, and an unyielding sense of duty, qualities that spoke to every warrior, elder, and child present. The desert seemed to exhale with the setting sun, the mountains casting long shadows over the recovering camp. Ayani looked out over the landscape, knowing that the events of the day would be remembered as more than a battle. They would become legend. The cleverness and bravery of a single girl had tipped the scales, proving that even in the harshest, most unforgiving lands of the West, honor, courage, and wisdom could prevail against greed, malice, and cruelty. In that moment, Ayani understood her role, her responsibility, and the bond she now shared with her people. She was no longer simply a survivor of circumstance. She was a guardian of her tribe, a beacon of hope, and a living testament to the power of courage, guided by knowledge and heart. The story of the poisoned water, the destroyed lodge, and the ruthless Brennan would forever be intertwined with her emergence as a leader, and the tribe's unwavering respect would ensure that her name endured long after the desert winds carried away the last traces of the day's conflict. As the sun sank behind the jagged desert peaks, casting long golden shadows across the camp, Ayani stood at the edge of the settlement, flanked by the warriors and the young girl she had rescued. The desert air carried the scent of sage dust and leather, blending with the quiet sounds of the tribe returning to their routines after a day filled with danger and uncertainty. Children ran along the riverbank, their laughter soft and cautious, while elders tended fires with steady hands, and the warriors inspected their gear, exchanging quiet words of relief. For Ayani, this was more than the calm after a storm. It was proof that courage, compassion, and decisive action could shape the destiny of an entire community. She remembered the river the moment she had waded into the raging current, and the choice that had seemed so small to help a frightened, injured child. That single act had set in motion events that saved lives, preserved sacred traditions, and restored hope to the tribe. Ayani realized that bravery and kindness were not merely virtues. They were forces that could ripple through generations, connecting people, cultures, and the future in ways beyond her understanding. The symbols of her heritage, the silver pendant around her neck, the intricate beadwork on her moccasins, and the ceremonial markings on the warriors' faces were more than ornaments. They were living connections to generations past, reminders that strength, wisdom, and resilience were cultivated through respect, shared experience, and action. By stepping forward, Ayani had claimed her place within this lineage. She was no longer just a lone girl surviving on the edge of the wilderness. She was a protector, a guide, and a symbol of hope for her people. Responsibility rested upon her shoulders, yet it no longer felt burdensome. Each decision she made carried meaning, shaping not only her own life, but the lives of everyone who depended on her. Destiny, she understood, was forged through action, through the courage to act when it mattered most. Ayane had become a bridge between past and present, between tradition and survival, embodying the values that would sustain her people. As she gazed toward the horizon, the vast wilderness seemed alive with possibility. The young girl she had rescued now stood confidently beside her, eyes full of trust and gratitude, while the warriors formed a protective circle around them. Together they embodied hope, protection, and the enduring strength of a community united by courage, compassion, and honor. The image of Ayana standing there, framed by the endless desert, became a lasting symbol of unity and resilience. To those watching, Ayani's journey offers a timeless lesson. Courage, kindness, and even small acts of bravery can change destinies, strengthen connections across generations, and inspire others to act. Every choice matters, and one brave heart can illuminate the path for many. If Ayani's story has inspired you, follow Epic Western Stories, share your thoughts in the comments, and like the video. Through these stories, we continue to explore the frontier where bravery, heart, and honor shape lives and legacies.